Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets for this meeting?
Yes, we have regrets from Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Council, do you have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Thank you. Or should I look twice? I wonder if we could be obliged with the mover and seconder resolve into committee of the whole. Councillor Johnston, Councillor Duddick, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? We are resolved into committee of the whole. Council, we have before us two really important consent items that I'm hoping that we'll have a bit of a presentation for to kick these consent items off. And I'm going to recognize the Planning Director, Dana Anderson. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Your Worship and members of Council. Actually, these two items, and we'll be brief, Nancy Sully and I will be co-presenting them briefly this evening, and they relate to the first two consent items in your agenda package. Both of these items relate to the provincial review, which was launched in October of 2013, that relate to the land use planning and appeal system, as well as the Development Charges Act. And the province launched a review of both of these items, as I mentioned, in late October. And I'm going to speak briefly to the land use planning and appeal system review, and Nancy will speak briefly on the development charges. The province issued a document for review, a consultation document that's appended to the report, and it identified 4 themes for the purpose of review. And these themes are itemized here, and I won't go through them in detail, but basically they focus around transparency in the process and accountability, relating to issues of municipal leadership and decision-making, as well as public consultation, and also looking at long-term public interests with the alignment of land use planning and infrastructure decisions. As you know, planning staff are involved with the Halton Area Policy Planners Group, which is known as the HAP group at the region, and it's made up of all the area policy planners from the local municipalities and the region itself. And so HAP have worked over that time period in reviewing the document and putting together a joint submission, which is also appended to your package. And all comments to the province were due this past Friday on January 10th. In reviewing the documentation with HAP and also independently as planning staff for the town of Oakville, there were 4 key areas that we focused in on the report, and I'll just briefly highlight those. One is certainly what I call the endless cycle for reviews and updates, and this is related to provincial reviews. And there's a need, we feel, to look at a comprehensive and consolidated review process so that when we're looking at the review of items like the Greenbelt plan, the provincial policy statement, as well as the growth plan and the Niagara Escarpment plan, that these are done within a consolidated cycle that then can align with both the regional and the local official plan reviews. The sense from, I think, most municipalities is that once you finish your official plan review, the province has now announced that they're scheduling and starting up another review before that review is even approved locally or regionally. And the second relates to 2 issues for appeals. And these are appeals of land use planning decisions to the Ontario Municipal Board. And the focus in the report is on 2 areas. It's what can be appealed and when. And what we've seen through not only our own process with the Livable Oakville plan, but also in many of our area municipalities, and especially at the region, is that the extent to which an appeal can provide delay in the system with the appeal to an entire plan, and then a decision that's rendered by the region itself, the province, and the board on an approved plan can then be further appealed by a private amendment. And this simply continues to delude what I would say are the approved policies of a municipality in conformity with provincial plans. So it's certainly an area that we've highlighted that those appeal rights should be removed from the process. And the other item that's identified is the question of what constitutes an appeal. And currently, the process by which you can appeal a matter to the Ontario Municipal Board is through having participated in the process and then filing a letter of objection and appeal with the necessary documentation. And certainly, an appeal can come in on the grounds of not good planning to an entire plan. And so the report identifies the concept of having a threshold to an appeal similar to what would happen in the court system, so that those appeals have to be evidence-based, and before you get an actual right to appeal, there's a lot more work that would have to be done, and that would pertain to both the municipality, developers, and members of the public. And then finally, the question around public consultation. I think you'll read in the report, it's a bit of a pat on the back to Oakville. I think we, of all the municipalities, use a very high standard for our public engagement. We go well above and beyond the minimum standards, and we're very much engaged with social media and online consultation as part of that process. So there's a suggestion that those minimum standards be updated by the province to provide consistency throughout. And I'll turn it over to Nancy.
Good evening. As Dana said, the review process undertook related to both planning and the development charge review. The review was launched in October. Staff did present a report to Council in December with just a preliminary overview of the process. And at that time, you passed a resolution supporting our municipal finance officer's recommendations. The purpose of the review is to ensure that development charge system is predictable, transparent, cost-effective, and responsive to the changing needs in the community. And it focuses on 7 key areas to be considered, and I've shown them up here. And as Dana said, our response has been submitted to the province on January the 10th. Our comments, as well as the comments from all the area municipalities and our Municipal Finance Association, focus on the need for the Development Charge Act to return to its key principle of growth paying for growth. There are 19 questions posed in the consultation document, and they focus around ineligible services, mandatory discounts, all these things that currently are restrictions in the Act, and as well ask the question of whether there's sufficient rigor in the process. And through our response, we do argue that there is sufficient rigor. Our master planning process that we undertake at the town has significant public consultation in it. There's an opportunity for key stakeholders to provide input. There's an opportunity at that time for developers to provide input, although they often do not. The growth needs identified through this consultation process, we would argue, are the cost of growth and therefore should be funded through development charges. And when we go through our development charge background study, we go through a very detailed process with developers looking at the cost estimates. And at the end of the day, if we can't agree, there is a process for appeal. The report, or the consultation document, also asks whether the eligible services need to be revised. And currently, municipal administration buildings, cultural facilities, hospitals, things like that are not eligible for DCs. If growth is to pay for growth, these facilities need to be recovered through development charges. In the case of the town, our Queen Elizabeth Park Community and Cultural Center, because part of that building is cultural, that portion was not eligible for DCs. As well, the recreation side had a mandatory discount of 10%. This resulted in about $12 million of our $27.5 million project costs being recovered through DCs. And we would argue that's not fair to the existing tax base to have to pay for that. As well, mandatory discounts, service level caps, they impact many of our services, especially our transit. Because it's been separated from roads, it's considered a soft service, it has both a 10% mandatory discount and it's based on our 10-year average service level. Our transportation master plan, switching gears, identified $145 million worth of capital needs to meet our transportation goals around transit and to remove the congestion on our roads. Because of the limitations in the DC, at the end of the day, only about $2.3 million is recoverable. We've used gas tax for a little bit more, but we cannot achieve the goals of that master plan with the way that the Act is currently in place. And one of the questions that the province has posed is whether we support the amendment that was done for the Toronto-York subway, where it removed all of the restrictions. We would argue that this has to be done. If we're to meet the provincial goals of relieving congestion, the Metrolinx goals, as well as the town's goals, these changes need to be made. And our mandatory discount service level caps need to be removed so that we can return to that principle of growth paying for growth. town supports accountability and transparency for municipal spending of our Section 37s and parkland dedication. One of the issues that was raised in the consultation document was the idea that there's not a lot of transparency around the way municipalities spend their Section 37s or collect for it, and parkland dedication. We would argue that our Livable Oakville plan includes clear and concise policies which set out how we can use those Section 37 funds, and we would support any new requirements for municipalities to have the same clear, transparent policies as we do. Another set of questions in the document relates to home affordability and the argument that development charges impact affordability for new home buyers. And while that is a component of the cost of a new home, the chart in the consultation document does indicate that between 5 to 7% of a new home, sometimes as much as 9%, is development charges, but that has stayed consistent since the Act was in place, so it hasn't been increasing more than the increase in the homes. The cost of a home is related to many different factors, not just development charges. And while affordability includes the purchase price of the home, it also includes the ongoing cost to maintain that home and to pay the property taxes. And if more of the costs of growth are shifted to the taxpayer, it'll make home affordability difficult for all residents, not just new home buyers. And finally, the last set of questions in the consultation document focus on high-density objectives and whether development charges should be used to incent intensification and to help meet those provincial targets. We've argued in the report that development charges are really meant to fund growth-related infrastructure. If you reduce the development charge or provide incentives through development charges to help with intensification, what you're doing is shifting more of those costs onto the existing taxpayer, and it's not what development charges were meant to do. In the case of Oakville, most of the intensification for the region will take place in Oakville, and it's unreasonable to expect the taxpayers in Oakville to subsidize growth for the entire region. As such, we think that the province needs to implement incentives to reach their targets. It's not something that the municipality should necessarily do on the development charges. There needs to be a framework that provides flexibility and the opportunity for both public consultation to ensure our municipal objectives and the provincial objectives are met. And finally, we did submit on January 10th. We don't know at this point in time what the next steps are. The province hasn't yet indicated what they plan to do with the responses. They did indicate that they were very seriously interested in looking at our input as well as that of the development community, and they would take it all under advice while they prepare their report for Cabinet. But at this time, we're not sure what the next steps will be. Okay, and that's...
Thank you very much to both of you. That's a wonderful pair of reports. In the province's discussion of the components of the cost of a new home, just wonder what allowance did they display for the profit of the builder and the land developer? Did they even mention it?
Yeah, I'd have to look, to tell you, to be honest.
And as a follow-up to that,
They don't, no.
is there any recognition in the province's papers that the market sets the price and that the builders are, under our present system, free to set the price according to the market?
There's not, but there was a lot of discussion regarding that when they had the consultation with municipalities, as well as at a roundtable I was at in Toronto. There was a lot of discussion around that issue.
Hopefully the ministry people will keep those basic elements in mind as they listen to these submissions. I'm very concerned that we're going to lose our ability to acquire land for parks. I'm very concerned about that. So, Council, let me ask if any of you have questions. Councillor Adams?
Thank you very much for the presentation and the previous presentation that has come forward. Can you tell us whether in any of the discussions you've had, there's been discussion about the provincial costs of growth and how those costs are covered or not covered?
There's been no discussion, to my knowledge, on that.
Okay, and I don't think, to my knowledge, there hasn't really been any comment made on that element either, has there?
No, there's not.
Okay. Did we consider making such a comment?
They were pretty clear that what they wanted were answers to the 19 questions they posed. They really wanted to, yeah,
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes, and our own issues are important enough. I don't think we really want to help them with theirs.
Well, if only they'd listen to us about our issues.
Yes.
I'll start with that.
I'm afraid very much that they're not listening to the right people on this. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor. My question was asked, but I'd just like to thank staff for these two very important reports, because as you mentioned, it is important that the province understands the position of municipalities in regards to growth and the costs. And I'll move them at the appropriate time.
Thank you. And Councillor Giddings?
Thank you. A couple of questions. On page 3 of the report, you had the net capital cost benefit to existing and so on. Net capital cost for the period 2012 to 2021 is $803 million. Eligible DC costs is about $200 million shy of that. Is that the effect that we're looking to try to move the needle on?
It is, yes.
So over that period, our existing taxpayers are footing about $200 million.
Approximately that. There's a whole lot of things in consideration. There is benefit to existing, which probably would not change. There always would be an element of growth that is benefit to existing. If there's a road we're replacing, there is a benefit to new homeowners, but that's basically what we're trying to make up. It's about 23% in this 10-year forecast that we're losing.
All right, thank you. And the second question, has any consideration been given by the province that you're aware of treating municipalities differently, perhaps those that are growing versus those that are built out, as a way of helping to mitigate these costs for existing taxpayers?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not to my knowledge. A lot of the discussion was around keeping the tension in the system and making sure that whatever they do doesn't adversely affect municipalities, but also not the development community. So there was no real discussion around the issues of, you know, once you're built out, there's a different set of demands. There's the same demands on us as well, though. We still have infrastructure renewal of our existing assets, and there's a constant struggle for the tax dollars to support growth or to pay for infrastructure renewal. So, but those didn't really get discussed a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor Johnston, I'll accept your motion, and I'll look for a second. Councillor DeMoff, thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
This is, pardon? Oh, right, I forgot. My fault. But I'm glad to have it. I'm glad to have it. So we're in committee of the whole. We only need a mover. You'd think after all these years I'd get that. So this is for both consent items. All those in favor? Opposed? And the consent items are adopted. Council, we have a confidential consent item. If you're satisfied with the report, then a motion of the recommendation in the report would be in order. Councillor Grant?
I have no questions. I'm satisfied with the report and will move it. I will move the report.
Thank you. So just for greater clarity, Councillor Grant is moving that staff be authorized to proceed in the hearing of the Ontario Municipal Board of Appeals of Dunbar Developments in accordance with the report from the Legal Department dated December 16, 2013. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Now that brings us to our first public hearing item tonight. And Councillor Duddick?
Your Worship, I wonder if we could move to item 5, given I see there's a few people who are here just to be assured that we're going to be moving an item in regards to a possible deferral.
Well, thank you for that suggestion. I wish I'd said that. So we'll go to item 5, public meeting and recommendation report, proposed zoning bylaw amendment, 822403 Ontario, Inc. This is popularly known as the Brookfield item, and the chair recognizes Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Your Worship. We circulated a motion on behalf of myself and Councillor DeMoff requesting Council's consideration of deferring the item to, I believe, the February 10th, 2014 P&D meeting. And members of Council, I believe, were provided a written copy at their desks.
Yes, indeed. Did you want to speak to it or give any further explanation for the public?
The reason for the deferral was to provide a core group of residents who've been actively involved throughout this planning process to meet with our planning staff to gain an understanding for their recommendation to support the application. As yet, because of holidays and timing schedule conflicts, we haven't had that opportunity, and planning have been very, very kind in regards to providing us that opportunity so they can understand. So that's the rationale for deferring.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Let's turn to item number 3 now, which is the public meeting report. And both 3 and 4, and for that matter, the 6th item, are the kind of public hearing that we have in advance of a recommendation report. So these 3 items are for the benefit of receiving comment from the public. Council will not be making a decision on these items tonight. The motion will be to receive whatever information we obtain. So the first item is item number 3, the zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision for Star Oak Developments Limited. And it appears that Carley Dodds is going to lead us through this, technology permitting. Ms. Dodds, we're all ears.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. I'm presenting the public meeting report for Star Oak Developments Limited. It's pages 49 to 66 in the agenda. Purpose of the report is to introduce the planning applications in conjunction with the required statutory public meeting. The report is to be received and no decisions are to be made at this time. The lands are located on the north side of Burnhamthorpe Road, east of 6th Line and south of Highway 407. The lands have an area of approximately 71 hectares and are surrounded by existing agricultural uses, vacant lands, and natural heritage areas. The town of Milton and Highway 407 are located immediately to the north. South of the subject property, 4 plans of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications are currently under review for residential developments. The lands are designated as Transitional Area, Village Square, Employment District, and Natural Heritage System Area in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. They're also identified as Transitional Area, Village Square, Employment District, Natural Heritage System Area, and Stormwater Management Facility in the North Oakville Master Plan. They're zoned existing development in the North Oakville zoning bylaw. The proposed plan of subdivision includes 218 residential units consisting of 126 single detached and 91 townhouse units in the south portion of the site. The townhouse units are concentrated along Burnhamthorpe Road and 6th Line. 34.5 hectares of employment lands, as well as stormwater management, village square, roads, open space, natural heritage system area blocks are also proposed, which is in line with the components identified in the master plan. Servicing allocation for 200 SDEs was approved as part of the 2012 allocation program with occupancy in July 2015. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment is intended to rezone the lands to a mix of general urban, light employment, service area employment, stormwater management facility, park, and natural heritage system area, as shown in the proposed schedule. The following matters have been identified for consideration as part of a complete analysis of the application: conformity with the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, subdivision design, including the layout of the street network, density within the transitional area, transit circulation, and cycling and pedestrian facilities, preservation and enhancement of the natural heritage system, integration of the subdivision design with adjacent uses, and timing of allocation and municipal infrastructure. The Burnhamthorpe Road character study and 6th Line environmental assessment are both currently underway and should be completed in the coming months. Next steps include further review and analysis, as well as consultation. The following recommendation has been provided for Council's consideration, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dodds. Are there questions, Council? Councillor Lapworth, in the absence of your colleague? I have one. Can you speak to us about Can you tell us anything about the applicant's intentions with regard to the natural heritage system in the subject lands?
To you, your mayor, in terms of, could you sort of clarify as to what you mean by intentions?
Well, when we're going to be looking at preservation and enhancement,
Yes.
so I'm interested to know if any of their submissions to date speak to either of those things and what they may have in mind, or if we know.
To you, currently it's just, as part of our review, we'll be looking at what sort of enhancements they're looking to provide in that natural heritage area, plantings and things like that, but currently I can't speak to anything in specific.
All right, thank you very much for that. Are there members of the public with information for council or staff on this matter? Mr. Fay, do you have any, are you here for this? All right, thank you very much. All right then, council, Councilor Grant.
I did have one question. Seeing how you brought up the natural heritage system, I was going to wait until later on when we actually get into the meat and potatoes of the whole matter, but I am a little concerned about street, and I thought it was Street I, but I'm not sure, Street 2, cutting across what looks to be a linkage. And I'm just wondering how that roadway is going to be handled crossing that NHS area.
Through your worship to Councillor Grant. That's the new North Oakville transit corridor. In terms of how it's going to be addressed, we haven't looked at that currently. I'm sure further along in the process that will be considered.
Okay, as I thought, then it's probably too soon to raise questions like that, but nevertheless, then I'll move the staff recommendation to receive.
Thank you very much, Councilor Grant, and I don't think it's too soon to signal our interest in the matter, so thank you for that. All those in favor of receipt? Any opposed? And that carries.
Thank you.
That brings us now to item number 4, the zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision for MGO, North Oakville 1, 3369 6th line. And if you'll give your attention to Tricia Collingwood, she will walk us through your summary of this. Ms. Collingwood, we're all ears.
Thank you. Good evening. The purpose of this report is to introduce the planning application for MGO Limited in conjunction with the required statutory public meeting. As noted by my report, there are no decisions to be made at this time, and the report is to be received by council. The property is located at 3369 6th line, south of Burnham Thorpe Road East and east of 6th line. The property has 720 meters of frontage along 6th line and a total site area of approximately 28 hectares. There was a farm home on the subject property that is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The home has been dismantled at this time to protect it during site alterations and construction through an approved heritage permit. The town is also underway with the 6th line environmental assessment. A preferred alternative has been brought forward to a public information center later in 2013 with the intent to construct a multimodal urban roadway that supports pedestrians, cyclists, transit, and automobiles. The lands are designated as neighborhood area and include a requirement for village square. The subject lands are located within Phase 2 of the identified residential development phases in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. Development of Phase 2 lands may proceed out of phase if specific criteria are met. Section 7.9.2C of the NOSP allows for development in Neighborhood 8 and 9, subject to the availability of urban infrastructure as a condition of draft plan approval, to a minimum of 25 hectares of land in the employment area designation and 10 hectares in the Trafalgar Urban Core area designation. The applicant intends to satisfy the phasing policies outlined in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan through the approval of the submitted plan of subdivision applications for the lands in the vicinity of Burnham Thorpe Road and 6 Line, and the Trafalgar Urban Core designated lands within proximity to Oak Park Boulevard and Dundas Street. It is anticipated that municipal infrastructure such as sewer and water services will be extended to the lands to the Star Oaks Plan of Subdivision and Zoning Amendment application, which you just heard from, as well as the Green Ginger Phase 1 lands that recently received draft plan of subdivision approval. These requirements will be used in the evaluation of the application in the future recommendation report. The majority of the subject lands are located within the general urban designation, with the neighborhood center designation stretching along 6 Line and along the south side of Street C. A small village square and part of a neighborhood park has also been identified. The lands are currently zoned existing development in the North Oakville zoning bylaw. And the applicant seeks approval to permit the lands to be developed for a subdivision that would include low and medium density residential uses, commercial and mixed-use buildings, roads, private lanes, a village square, a park that is all consistent with the approved North Oakville East Master Plan. There are 618 residential units proposed, consisting of 544 single detached and 74 semi-detached units with an overall density of 34 units per hectare. The applicant is proposing to rezone the properties from existing development, ED, to general urban uses, neighborhood center, park, and park uses, including some special provisions to regulate the building form. The following matters have been identified for consideration as part of a complete analysis of the application: the conformity to the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, and more specifically the housing mix, density, and neighborhood center uses, zoning regulations, the phasing of the development relative to the approved servicing allocation program and infrastructure planning, the 6 Line environmental assessment, the reconstruction and siting of the heritage farmhouse. The plan is to retain the home on site, and through the review process, the new location, ownership, and use of that structure will be determined. The owner has entered into a heritage agreement at this time with the town and posted securities to ensure the protection of the building through the relocation and construction process. Other matters are the park programming needs, school accommodation needs, layout of the development, orientation of blocks, and access to 6 Line. Next steps include further review and analysis, as well as consultation with agencies and the public. In conclusion, staff have put forward the following recommendation as shown for council's consideration, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. Council, do you have any questions? Are there members of the public with information or questions about this matter? Ms. Collingwood, I have a brief question. You know, on your list of things to be considered, the last one was the layout. Could you page back to the sort of bird's eye view that was in color of the layout with the surround? This one. When I remember what the North Oakville East Secondary Plan projected, the residential sort of tended to surround the village. You know, the more urban village business was in the center of it, with the features like the park and all were together in the center, as I recall it anyway. And in this, it appears to be off to one side. So is that an example of what you mean by the layout?
This actually is straight from the North Oakville East. This is the master plan straight from the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. The example I was referring to was more of how the laneways are hit and the roadways are going to be hitting and accessing 6 Line, how the residents or the proposed dwellings will be accessing 6 Line or orientated towards 6 Line, and the makeup of the neighborhood center uses as well. So no, I wasn't referring to the actual layout that's presented in the master plan.
So I think what I was recollecting, I think, was the Duaney sort of concept of the, you know, these neat 14 little village type things with the village square in the center.
Yep, potentially.
So that's changed long ago, apparently. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I'll look for a motion to receive then, since there are no questions or other information. Councillor Grant, again, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carries, and that's received. Thank you, Ms. Collingwood.
Thank you.
Now, item 6, the Trafalgar Road Corridor Planning Study, Official Plan Amendment, Public Meeting Report. If you give Mr. Charles your attention, he will summarize the matter for us. Welcome, Mr. Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of Council. So this is a statutory public meeting for proposed amendments to the town's official plan for the land specifically along Trafalgar Road. There was, if Council recall, a terms of reference which was presented in February of 2013, as well as a preliminary report which was tabled in October. This is to provide the statutory requirements to proceed with amendments to the official plan. There have been a number of open houses which have been held for this item, including a third one this evening, just before the meeting, the council meeting. So the area of Trafalgar Road being studied is not just it's primarily for those properties which are fronting directly onto the road. The study area is broader than that to provide the context of how those properties are fronting onto Trafalgar. Livable Oakville identifies the lands between the QEW and Dundas along Trafalgar as that corridor to be studied to identify opportunities for potential intensification associated with transit improvements. The first open house, which was held back in June, was an opportunity to introduce the study as well as clarify the scope of that study. The second open house had a lot less attendance, but was there to really note what preliminary work staff had done. And this evening, staff were at the meeting to present the key sites which have been identified. Because of the direction provided by the Livable Oakville Plan and the environmental assessment being undertaken by Halton Region for Trafalgar Road, it's important to establish the framework which will guide the future development along this corridor. This study is intended to complement the region's EA and identify opportunities to align future transit improvements with supporting land uses. This means that there may be opportunities for some intensification and transit-oriented development along the corridor. Staff is also investigating how the design of new development will help promote that more cohesive corridor and focus on the pedestrian connections. So the existing development along the corridor can be characterized primarily by auto-oriented development. There are substantial areas of surface parking along the street edge. There's a mix of different land uses, commercial, office, institutional, residential. There's a number of places of worship as well. The existing street network is reflective of that historical suburban development pattern. And the study area, there's a number of window streets as well as properties which are rear lotted to Trafalgar Road. The neighboring areas immediately adjacent to the corridor are primarily low density residential neighborhoods. And the idea here would be to connect Uptown with Midtown and the other neighborhoods to Trafalgar Road and the future higher order transit. The policy context as established starts with the province and filters down into Halton Region, and there's a number of studies that the town has also done. Most importantly is the context established through our official plan, the Livable Oakville Plan. So there's a number of sites that have been further defined. There were 9 primary sites which were investigated. These can be characterized, as I noted, with large surface parking lots, significant street frontage, opportunities for higher order transit or to support higher order transit, lands which were underutilized perhaps, and the potential for redevelopment. Some sites have been identified also by the public. The lands in the Uptown core have not been included as part of the study since the policy context was established through Livable Oakville. There's also, staff took a look at the place of worship sites along the corridor as well as the high density residential sites. The lands on the east side of Trafalgar, south of Town Hall down to the QEW were also identified, but those as well as the commercial sites throughout the corridor, of which there's a number that have been are designated as commercial, won't be subject to change through this policy review, simply because the town will be undertaking a commercial and employment review I think council will be seeing something about that in the coming meetings, and that will hopefully be able to provide a little bit further context for the lands which are currently designated as commercial. So based on that, there were 3 primary sites which got filtered out, and those include sites 4, 5, and 6, and I'll start with number 4, which is the Sheridan College lands. The area in front of the college is a fairly large area, primarily surface parking, and what staff have identified is a potential to introduce a mix of uses fronting onto Trafalgar Road with some higher built form towards the south end of the property. And because of the existing neighborhood along the north, which is a single detached residential development, staff are not suggesting that higher heights be placed along there, but that a maximum of 4 stories be looked at. There are some good opportunities with this site to integrate transit, whether directly on site or along the street. The development, as I know, should be focused towards Trafalgar Road, preferably along Ceremonial Drive, with the taller built forms to the south end of the, I guess that's an inverted L. The draft official plan suggests the site should retain its institutional designation and can introduce urban core type uses and building heights. Site 5 is located just north of the place of worship west side of Trafalgar and wraps around to Glen Ashton. It also includes a piece of the property that was left over from the Kilberry or the Bennington Homes subdivision. There is an existing retail and office operation right at the southwest corner of the intersection, and because of the commercial review being done later this year, that's not being proposed to be changed. However, because there is a cap on the GFA for that site, which staff are suggesting be lifted, since that won't be carried forward as part of the in-zone project. In the middle of this outlined area is an application by Dunbar Development, wherein they're looking at 113 condominium townhouses. Although that application has been appealed, staff are still looking at the overall context of this particular proposal in that of the larger land holding. In terms of the uses that are being looked at, it would be a Main Street 2 designation where there could be an introduction of retail with residential as part of the development. The heights, though, is much more important simply because of the subdivision that's on the west side. Staff are looking at a 2 to 4 story height limit on the west side of this area, and then 4 to 6 stories for those lands directly fronting onto Trafalgar Road. Site number 6 is Halton Region's reservoir site, which is currently being decommissioned. The area surrounding this site is medium density residential. Staff are currently considering the possibility of medium density residential on this site as well, which would complement the designation around it. At this time, we're still in discussions with Halton Region to determine, or at least find out if they've determined what their longer term goals are for the site to ensure that that will work in terms of the policy direction. With that medium density designation would be a townhouse form, which is similar to what's there in the 2 to 3 story range. So as noted, there are a number of place of worship sites within the corridor. Staff have been looking at those, and there are some larger properties which could include ancillary residential uses which would complement the existing place of worship permissions, such as a seniors-oriented housing could work. And although what we would suggest is that not necessarily a change in the actual land use designation to maintain that as low density, but introduce some other permissions. There's also the lands which are south of Sheridan College, south of the wooded area, which are designated as high density, and there's a potential there just based on the existing built form and the maximum density of 185 units. There could be a possibility of increasing that in certain locations. With the next steps in the study process would be further analysis of the sites that we're identifying this evening, as well as hearing from what the public provided at the open house, as well as council's comments. We will be then proceeding with the recommendation to provide changes to the land use designation where appropriate, possibly associated heights along with that. And that final report will be coming hopefully sooner than later. So the recommendation is listed on this slide. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So would I be accurate to sum it up as no radical proposals here?
That's a fair summary, yes.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions or comments? Councillor Adams.
I have a couple of sites that I wanted to ask some questions about. The first one is if you could back up to the Regions site, please. That's right, yeah, site number 6. So I understand that you've been having a few discussions with some of the regional staff about, first of all, the demolition work, and second, their timeframes, and I understand that they haven't concluded on anything yet. Is that a good paraphrasing of all the discussions that have happened?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so on that basis, if the region was going to declare the land surplus and get out of that land, could we review that site in a similar fashion as we've reviewed the school sites in southeast Oakville, where part of the land was maintained for parkland, and then part of the land was used as appropriate? So in this case, the land on the east side, where people currently use the land as parkland, could be maintained, and the side on the west might be modified?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because we don't have any proposal on the site right now, what we were looking at was what made sense based on the existing context that's there. Should the site redevelop, there would be a requirement, if it's residential, to provide the regular cash or regular parkland dedication, which could form cash in lieu. But based on the configuration of this property, it's quite possible that there could be a parkland component as part of the overall redevelopment of the site. The form of that remains to be seen. We have spoken with our friends in Parks and Open Space who have suggested that something like that, although it's not identified as on their wants list, they would certainly take a look at it if that's a possibility.
Okay, so that thank you for continuing to look at that. You'll have that on your list, I presume. And the other is access to that site. In my discussion with the region around the EA for Trafalgar Road, there was discussion about trying to maintain the right-in, right-out access point on Trafalgar Road from that site, and whether as you say, it may be too early to identify what's going to happen there, but giving that flexibility to that site might be a useful element to how it gets used in the future, whether it be used for regional purposes or for some other purpose down the road. Yeah. So if you could comment on that, that would be helpful.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's certainly something that we can speak to the region about in terms of how access to the site would work. At this point, we don't have any preconceived notions that it should be coming in off Trafalgar or not, whether it is right in or right out. At this point, I'm not really sure. Through the investigation that we were doing as part of the public works site, the former public works site on the west side, and if you take a look, that's in the Livable Oakville plan, it does, from what I recall, there was a connection of Georgian out to Trafalgar Road. Whether or not that provides the intersection necessary with the roads that are there, that's certainly something that we can discuss with the region.
Okay, thank you. So on this particular site, the change in the OP to allow for the medium density, would it be an overlay on the existing institutional use? Or is it a replacement too? And would the region have the opportunity to continue to use the site for something if they identified a need?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the lands are currently designated as utilities, so the medium density would replace that utility designation if that were to go through like that.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The lands are currently designated as utility. So what staff are looking at right now, should it be medium density, that would replace the utility designation.
Okay, so should I meant to say utility, non-institutional. So should the region want to have something there, they would have to have further discussion with us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intent with Halton Region is to get some idea as to what their longer term plans are. If their intent is to maintain it or to reuse it for some utility function, then obviously it doesn't make a lot of sense to redesignate the property for medium density, so we would maintain that. So that's why we need to continue to have that dialogue with the region.
Okay, so before this comes back, there's going to be some point of comment on that.
That's our hope,
okay,
yes.
Very good.
Sure.
I'll leave that site. Could I take you back to the town hall lands, please, which are not actually one of the ones that's, as I understand it, being considered for modification, but it's site number 2 down there. Where are you going with that at the current time? Nowhere until a later date?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, at this point, because the Midtown EA is still ongoing, and one of the options which was presented included a possibility of bringing a road through the site, it makes some sense to try and get some finality to that EA process before we're in a position of recommending a change to the land use designation.
And so, if we were reluctant to want to make substantial changes to the way this land gets used, if we said so now, what impact would that have?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the impact, what it essentially does is it not so much that it compromises the EA process, it's preferred that we have an idea of how the road would align, because if it creates a very clear division through the property, it may be more appropriate to have the right land use on the right side of whatever that road might be. And because at such time we don't know where that road is going to be, it doesn't make sense to try and change the land use at this time. So once the EA process reaches its conclusion, there will still be some opportunities to look at the land use designation changes as part of this.
Okay, so the reason I'm bringing this up is when we had the discussion about the Midtown area, and there's comments in here around relocation of civic and government offices to the Midtown. When we had that discussion, I made a point of clarifying that so that it didn't, at the time, there was a comment about moving town hall. And we changed that wording specifically to remove comment that we were going to move town hall. And I'm worried that this is sneaking in another, we're going to move town hall before it's time to really firmly make that decision with all the information before us. So I want to make sure that staff are considerate of that issue and not pushing us down that road before we're ready to do that.
Understood.
Okay.
Interesting set of questions. Any other questions? Mr. Charles, I wonder if I could ask you about Trafalgar Road at let's go to 50, great slide to have up. I want to go to sort of a 50,000 foot level. So regional road, right?
Correct.
And in the region's future plans for it, how many lanes will it have?
It's 3 lanes in each direction. The curb lane would be for high occupancy vehicle.
So when earlier in the discussion, when we were talking about these different places to have access onto or off of Trafalgar, like for example at the reservoir, but everywhere, my question really goes to the entire area. Are we keeping firmly in mind the transportation component of this road's future? So, you know, because I imagine that every time we add an intersection, we do something to the ability to move traffic up and down it, right?
Fair point. And the idea is that the land use component would complement the EA process, so that where we anticipate there will be transit stops, we will have a corresponding, or at least a density that makes sense in that location, a built form and a range of uses that makes sense with those intersections. Through the EA process, the region has gone through the exercise of identifying where those potential intersections, if there are new intersections, where those would be going. If memory serves, I think there's only 1, maybe 2 new intersections which could be introduced here. For the most part, it's those intersections which are currently existing are the ones being planned for.
Right, and do we have any opportunity to reduce the number of existing intersections through this work?
Not through this work per se. Town staff have been working with the region on this, and part of the committee that has been reviewing the EA and been providing the input to that. So the idea is to work with them to understand the region's objectives, and then this study is to help identify what the town's objectives are.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, because as the town's transportation master plan and the region's transportation master plan make clear, we're embarked on a multi-year, many hundred of $1 million capital program to solve the traffic problem. And a lot of people in our town are very hopeful that we'll get it right. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping it in the forefront as we work. So thanks very much for that. If there's no other questions, I'll ask for the motion. Oh, and are there any members of the public with questions or information? They talked me out of it on the earlier ones. Council welcomes any information or questions from the public. Sir, yes, if you would come up to the microphone, ma'am, you can be first, and sir, you can be second. And if you would identify yourself for the clerk and then speak into the microphone, council would be very glad to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Loretta Serafini, and I'm speaking tonight about Area 5 in this report. The report suggests an intensification of the existing plans for that area, and I don't particularly have a problem with that. I think that it makes sense, actually, that that land along Trafalgar Road have a higher density than what exists there now. My only concern would be for the widening of the road, and it's currently, I think it's 5 lanes where we are. So you'd be looking at adding another lane, and that would cause me some concern. I think that as someone who spends a lot of time on Trafalgar Road and watching what happens with traffic, I can share a few things with you. The road is really only busy 2 times of the day. In the morning, there's a lot of traffic heading south, and in the evening, there's a lot of traffic heading south. So I don't know if any changes that you're suggesting with respect to the traffic patterns or whatever are going to address the fact that there really are only maybe 3 or 4 hours of the day where there's any kind of a traffic problem. And I wouldn't even call it a traffic problem. Our customers that turn in and out of our driveway do not have any problems making their left turns or their right turns in or out of the driveway. They may have to wait for, a minute or 2, but it's not so bad that it's a problem. On the other hand, the staff that work for us are constantly complaining about the fact that there isn't enough public transportation and that the routes are not clear enough, easy enough, fast enough to get them up and down that Trafalgar Road corridor. So those are just 2 things that I would share with you.
Thank you very much for that, especially the second one, although I totally understand the first one as well. And I'll be certain to bring that up. Council's invested a lot of money in the transit system, and we really do want everyone to understand the resource that's there for them now. So we definitely will look to that. Councillor Adams has a question for you as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Loretta, would you mind just telling us what address you represent?
2136 Trafalgar Road, carrying on business as Wagaway Kennels.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Serafini. Sir, you're next. Welcome, and we look forward to you introducing yourself and sharing your information with us.
Yes, just a couple of questions. My name's Herb Massey. I'm backing onto the college. I walk up and down there on Trafalgar Road several times of the day. I just wonder what the speed limit would be, especially when you put the HOV lanes in there, and the noise problem. Like when you walk up and down, you and I walk up and down there, we couldn't, at basically any time of the day, it's hard to converse right now. Never mind when you add 3 more lanes each side, or actually 1 lane each side. The noise factor would be with the homes also.
Well, thank you for the points of concern. I certainly can't answer those.
Okay.
But don't run away. There may be others as well. But these are useful and valuable inputs which staff are taking note of for their further work on the matter. And maybe I'll take one of those walks with you. Let's have that. Let's have a stroll and see how it is.
Oh, yes, anytime.
Okay.
Thank
Super.
you. Also, I just wondered what, was the 9th line ever taken a look at as far as the going from, say, the 401 to the QE, which they're using right, or which they're going to use right now for Trafalgar? Like 9th line, there's really nothing there right now that wouldn't have a problem with noise or traffic problems?
Well, in the region's transportation master plan, not only is Trafalgar and in the town's plan as well, it's kind of the main spine of the town. Ninth Line also becomes a thoroughfare north-south, but not as big. And some of it's under construction right now as we speak. As we we're getting ready to bring into production the employment lands on the east side of Ninth Line, above Upper Middle. So that'll create more jobs for the town, and that too will generate traffic.
Yeah.
Councillor Adams is the chair of planning at the region, in addition to his work here on this council. And both of these are regional plans. And he and I would be pleased to meet with you to go through those and give you more understanding of what's coming.
Okay, okay.
So thanks very much for coming
Thank you.
forward. Councillor Adams?
Sorry, could I ask the gentleman, Mr. Massey, a quick question? I just wondered if you wouldn't mind pointing out where exactly you reside. You said you backed onto Sheridan. Are you backing on right at the corner of Trafalgar and Sheridan?
I back onto a park area. I'm in Park, yes. There's a park there, and I back onto Sheridan also.
Okay, thank you very much. And,
I'm just saying I'm concerned about the traffic and the noise. The traffic.
Okay.
You add another lane, it'd be like the QE or.
We'll invite Councillor Adams to join us on our walk.
Oh, yes, fantastic.
He's a great walker.
I'd gladly join you on
We'll
the
have to have earphones between each one because you will not hear one from the other.
New high-tech thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And for your information, Ninth Line is widening to 4 lanes on an urban cross-section this coming year. So the part in Oakville is getting widened right now, as the mayor noted.
Okay.
I think I see a forest of hands now. This is great when we generate conversation. Pierre, would you like to be next? Pierre Girard. Pierre is the president of the River Oaks Residents Association of Residents.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to be known. Actually, most of my comments will actually deal with Halton, and I'll be sending them comments. But from the discussions I had before with the gentleman from Halton who was doing this study, the EA, there's a couple of things which was not clear to me. First, we have the HOV lanes, which is the curb lane, which you will have, well, HOV works very well, but when you have a light and you needed to do a right turn every few hundred meters, I'm not sure how that will work. And the traffic patterns and the need for synchronizing the lights, either going south in the morning or north in the evening, wasn't quite clear how that's coordinated with the city, given that Halton is responsible for, from what I heard, for the lights on Trafalgar, but of course the city is responsible for all the other roads inputting into there. So I'm not quite sure how that's being coordinated between Halton and Oakville.
It'll be very smoothly coordinated. And your confidence in that should arise from the fact that what you really need, I think what everybody needs to understand is that we have 2 municipal service delivery corporations. One's called Halton, one's called Oakville. And half of the people that you see here are the directors of the Halton Corporation.
Yeah.
And all of us are the directors of this corporation, if I can make the analogy to corporate structure. So, and one of the things I'm concerned to do, as long as I'm mayor, is to not put people to the artificial, I think, trouble of saying, that doesn't belong here, go there. Because when you go there, you're going to find us, so we might as well listen to you wherever you want to talk to us. So I just want to assure you that for many years, the town of Oakville has prided itself on maximizing coordination with the region. We don't want anything but an efficient and effective approach. Commissioner?
Mayor Burton, I just wanted to add to that, and at a staff level, there's a great deal of coordination that happens between the two, the town as well as the region, in order to ensure that the timing of lights and the flow of traffic is maintained to its best optimal condition. So those discussions happen on an ongoing basis at a staff level.
Okay, if there is comments, who should it be directed to?
Can I just add one more thing to the point? One of the things that we've done at the region even though something has been put at the regional level of authority, the region, for the greater happiness of the 4 different communities, and the 4 member communities of Halton are all very distinct. The region has been known, and we've done it quite a bit, to delegate back down to us to do the actual operation of the thing that they're in charge of. And that assists in making it smoother. So that's why I gave you the confident answer that I gave.
Thank
So
you.
go ahead, please.
That was the comment that I was hoping to hear because I hadn't heard it before. If there is comment that Roar may have, what is the best place to direct it to?
Well, if it's the report that's before us tonight, your counselor or the staff would be the place to send it. If you're ever in doubt about where to send something, send it to the mayor's office and we'll traffic cop it to the right place. We're a delivery service. It's one of the things we do to have good customer service here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grant?
Just actually further comment is towards lights along Trafalgar. About a year ago, around Christmas time, it was discovered that there's trouble getting people on Leyland from Oakville Place, and basically the town and the region worked together to make sure that the lights were timed properly in such a way to move the heavier traffic that you get during holiday seasons. And they did it again this year. So if it seems like it's, you know, sort of this weird, messy thing, it's not. It's actually a very smooth system, and they quite easily accommodate heavier traffic flows and different traffic patterns as time goes on. So it'll work well, I'm sure.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. You can be next. Just please introduce yourself and share your information.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. My name's Wanda Crichton. I'm a resident of 372 Rosegate Way here in Oakville. I have made a written submission, which I think became part of the record, but I also came out tonight. So the first thing I would like to do is to actually thank Tom Adams, because I'm just a citizen, and when you spoke about, I had a lot of questions and concerns, he managed to redirect them to different areas. But that raised actually more questions. I actually live between areas 6 and 7. The gentleman who presented the summary of the plan didn't really talk about area 7. So I just want to highlight 4 things. First of all, the noise is huge. My colleague, I'd like to thank the neighbor. When you take the walk, come for a coffee and sit in my back patio when you're finished and just listen to the roar of the traffic now. I did receive a reply from a gentleman at the town regarding decibel levels. There are currently no noise barriers whatsoever. Right now, a speaking voice is 15 decibels. A traffic horn is 110. Consistent exposure to decibel levels at 90 will start hearing loss. Traffic is considered 85. What you're proposing on Trafalgar is to add 1/3 more noise. So that's pushing us over the actual known damage to hearing. So when I brought this up tonight, the gentleman from the region was quite responsive and said he'd look into that. The town planning individual, however, simply was trying to tell me that I really didn't know what I was talking about. That's the impression I received, and I'd like that to go on the record. The second thing is traffic and traffic flow. I was very pleased to hear your worship talk about minimizing the number of ins and outs on Trafalgar Road into whether it's residential or commercial or mixed. Right now, the way the access to the roads are in our particular area, there is a natural flow that people cut through our neighborhood streets, which is a school bus run, to access a low-rise commercial plaza. There's a very simple solution to that, and that's to just close off the access and put the turning lanes off of a road called Postridge. I don't know whether that's been looked at. But the development that's being proposed is going to cause more overflow into our residential neighbors. I'm not just talking about mine, I'm talking about my colleagues in Ward 5. So anything that can be done with the new development to flow the traffic, not through our residential streets, but into those feeder roads like Postridge is, you know, I don't see that happening here, and that's my question. The only other question I have is, it's actually a comment. We are just residents. You know, we live our lives, we pay our taxes, we trust you people to look after us to some extent. And it was very disconcerting to get a letter December 30th telling us that a meeting was tonight. That's the holiday season. In terms of consultation, I think the planning staff were rather gratuitous, congratulating themselves on the consultation process. If you ask the people sitting back here, to have one meeting in September, I happen to be away, others I'm sure have other things. Having a one-off time to actually come and see something is insufficient for this extent of development. So I would hope that in future you would have the opportunity to have a couple of more meetings so that people are not restricted to one date, one time in terms of having ready access. So, so that's my question. What's being done about noise? What's being done about the pollution being generated by the proposal to widen Trafalgar and all this? And what's being done to minimize the speeding that's already existing and will be forthcoming?
We'll all be looking for the answers to those questions in the reports that will come. But
Okay.
The point of tonight is to make sure that those questions are lodged so that people know the answers are being looked, that staff will know the answers are being looked for.
And I'd also like to thank Mr. Adams for bringing up the issue of green space. That reservoir, it was news to us that it was going to be demolished. We live there. Always showed up, all of a sudden there's, you know, bulldozers, the timing of which was terrible. They start digging now. Well, is that work going to be finished? There's some people sitting back here. Those bulldozers are sitting right in front of their homes and will be there for months. Again, it sends a signal that there isn't a lot of consideration always for the residents and the impact of the work. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming and bringing those points. And I will contact you for the day of the walk. Yeah, I'm home. Okay. Ma'am? Welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. I too live on Park Lane Road. I am more towards Trafalgar, and I too would love to join your walk because I sit out on my deck, and the noise in the evening is low. But as the woman who runs Wagaway Kennels said, there are 2 periods of time when it is busy. I grew up in Toronto. I'm used to noise. But I really do question with the increased buses that we're going to be using those HOV lanes, that is really increasing the decibel level of the traffic on that road. Also to encouraging people to use that road by increasing the number of lanes. I don't know when you say high volume lanes, how many people? Is this going to be 2 like it is on the QEW? Is it going to be 3? Has it been identified at the council, at the regional level? And I asked Mr. Adams if he could please answer that, what a high volume lane is.
The initial design that's being contemplated is actually not a BRT, it's an HOV, which would be 2 or more vehicles, as I understand where the region's going. But the environmental study report is being planned to be issued this spring, as I understand the latest time frame. And that opens up a 30-day window for people to look at it and then determine if they've got issues that they want dealt with before it gets finalized. So in terms of a process, there's still an opportunity for last words, I suppose you'd say, but it is fairly far along in terms of the process of the design work. And the idea is that the HOV lanes get converted to a bus rapid transit lane on the outside down the road. So as the transit system builds, it gets converted.
So what you were saying...
Is that answering your question?
Yes, what you're saying, Councillor Adams, is that originally we will be getting a lot more traffic until they're converted to bus lanes.
Well, you're going to, I think what you'd experience is a period of time where there's more capacity on the road than there is today, and so you'd have a period of time where traffic could flow more easily. And as the traffic levels build and the transit system builds, the outside lanes would be removed as HOV lanes and be allowed only for buses.
Now, I realize that my next point of the Trafalgar corridor of the road system, because it is a regional road, and so I direct my question to Councillor Adams, if I may, is, of course, the underpass at the railways. I understand that the bridge would probably be owned by CN, and the road is regional, and that is
Are you talking about down at the GO station?
I am. Going into town, and I understand that that's all part of a different study for the town, but it certainly has to be connected to what's happening north of that point, because whenever Trafalgar gets jammed, it tends to get jammed right there. And it's certainly something that the town needs to look at, is that underpass, because of turning left onto Cornwall, right onto Spears, and then going straight into
So
town.
the town is looking at that, and our staff over there are waving their hands around to say we won't talk. But the region's EA process at the current time ends north of the QEW.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
And so there's a cutoff point of where the region's work stops and the town's work begins. And so the cutoff point is the intersection where Iroquois Shore is down near Oakville Place.
Right. And I'd also just like to say that I appreciate the efforts that hopefully will be made in the future to respect the residential nature of the developments that are off of Trafalgar, and respect our right to peaceful and kind living in this town.
Well, I think, first off, in Mr. Charles's report, I think you heard evidence of that, which I commented on by saying there are no radical proposals there. And secondly, I think you're already aware that Councillor Adams is quite the champion of that point around both this council table and the other one.
Yes, I am. And I'd like to...
If you're serious about joining us on the walk, we need to know your name and address.
Oh, I'm Myra Willis. I live at 423 Park Lane Road.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Who's next? Sir? Welcome. And if I could ask you to start by introducing yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Philip Newcomb and live at 239 Hickory Circle, so just on the east side of site number 5. And my comment was that up until now, that site number 5, I understood it to be the densification, but I also understood that it'd be only a number of stories. And this evening I heard that it would be 4 to 6 stories. With the increased traffic on Trafalgar, we've lived on Hickory for 19 years, and we've seen a tremendous increase in the noise level, probably in the last 5 years more than any other time. But as soon as you start backing tall buildings on Trafalgar, we will get a lot more reflected noise that will bounce off those buildings and over onto our side. So with the lady who mentioned that the noise levels are already fairly high, my concerns are that they'll get significantly higher unless the height of those buildings is controlled and fits in more with the buildings on both the east side and in the development to the west of that. The second point that I wanted to raise was I understand that we have to widen Trafalgar because the traffic is terrible. And I've sat for 20 minutes to half an hour between Glen Ashton and Upper Middle Road at 8 o'clock in the morning, almost pulling my hair out. But my concern is that as you widen the street, you also drive more traffic to it. And if it becomes 6 lanes, we will end up with more traffic on the road. As soon as it bunches up, people start racing up Golden Briar Trail, going from Upper Middle up to Glen Ashton and then scoot across to Dundas. And we've noticed that there's more traffic just on that side street, which I don't think should really happen. So I just wanted to voice my concerns about those issues.
And they're noted, and thank you very much for bringing them.
Thank you.
Sir? Welcome. Council looks forward to your information. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Ken Cushai, and we own the property at 356 Kittredge, which backs onto site number 6. So I'd like to begin by thanking the Mayor earlier for the recognition of the province potentially taking away the ability for the town of Oakville to open up new park spaces. And I'd also like to thank Councillor Adams for the proposal that he put forth earlier around potentially taking Site 6 and leveraging what might end up being a development, a mid-density development, and securing that as park space. As a parent of 2 young kids, there is a park space to the north of there, but when you've got a busy lifestyle like a lot of people today, having it just a open space for people to play adds not just value to the homes, but it adds value to the community. So in line with the Oakville livable community, I think that's one thing I'd like to put my support behind if the region does indeed decide to consider that land. I can't remember what term you used, but excessive to make it available to the town of Oakville. I also want to know, is there a way for residents to sign up to something so that as this process goes through in specific areas, they can be proactively notified? Okay, and what would that process be?
Well, you gave us your address and your name just now.
Yeah.
Unless you stop us, we're going to notify you to death from now on.
Perfect.
And on the region, I don't want to give you too much hope, but I guess the way I'll put it is there are 21 votes on the regional council, and Oakville has 7 of them, and we're very friendly. We have a lot of friends there, so don't give up. What he's asking about could happen.
I think just showing up here tonight is an indication nobody in this room is giving up.
But it does take 11 to do anything up there.
Let me know if you need any help. I can also support the other gentleman talking about Golden Briar. I actually do own a property that I've lived in. I've been a resident of Oakville for about 39 years, so I've seen a lot of the change that other people have mentioned. And Golden Briar, not only is it becoming a throughway for a lot of cars these days, as Trafalgar gets busier today, what you're seeing is people coming down upper middle roads when they're going to their Walmart or their Superstore or the Longos. They're cutting down that way because when you miss a light, you actually miss about 3 lights. There's rarely cars on that road, but there are kids. So as the town considers the development of Trafalgar, using those streets that they're calling feeder streets, just taking that into consideration. I don't know what the proposal is. I'll go back to the experts who are responsible for that, but I just wanted to make sure the voice was raised.
Well, these are valuable points, and this is the time to raise them, and everything's being noted, and it'll all go into the mix. I thank you very much for bringing them to us.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Michael Mazurski, and I guess going back to around 2000, they started work on the Trafalgar expansion and went to a number of meetings back then. I believe it was supposed to start 2006, construction originally, and a number of meetings that I've gone to, Councillors Knoll, Grant, and Adams were there. And I'm just wondering if, Councillor Adams, can you give us an update as to where that stands? Because the last meeting I believe I attended was at the regional offices talking about Trafalgar and Dundas.
So on the Trafalgar Road corridor, there was a meeting in December that was a part of the environmental assessment process. They outlined the road corridor design at a high level between Iroquois Shore up to Dundas. They provided road pictures and cross-section designs, I guess I'd say. What comments they received that night will be considered before the region staff file the environmental study report, and that's expected to be in 2014, so this year. That opens up a 30-day window of comment from anybody in the public, resident, corporation, whomever, or other public agency for that matter. And that allows any final discussions to be had around whether anything needs to change or not. And if the region fails to satisfy anybody who's brought forward an issue, they can request what's called a bump up to that process, and that would require some further work. But there is a capital plan for the various segments of Trafalgar Road going from south up to north, and when the construction work would happen. There would still need to be design work between now and the actual construction. So what's happened at this point is the very high level planning work around what the road design would look like, but the detailed design work still has to be done. And so that would have to happen as the various elements come forward.
So we'll still continue to get notifications of these meetings, like I have been in the past?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Jeffrey Reed would be a good contact point at the region. But certainly if you wish to, we can get you into contact if you leave your contact information.
Yeah, well, I get the email, or not
Okay.
emails,
Oh, you
but
do
the
get the
letters.
emails.
I get
You
the
do get
letters.
them, okay.
I do get the letters all the time about the
So
meetings.
if you, that information does come out. It is available on the region's website if you want to look at the Trafalgar Road EA materials that are there.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming, sir. Is there anyone else who has anything to share? Well, thank you very much. I thank everyone for coming out and bringing that in. Oh, Councillor DeMoff?
I just had a question once the residents have finished coming forward,
right.
if that's okay.
Then let me just finish thanking everyone for coming out to share their information with us. We appreciate it, and it is useful. And I do understand that you have things, be it family, children, or significant others that you could be spending time with. So thank you for spending it with us and sharing your information. I'll confine it to table. Councillor DeMoff has a question for staff.
There was a letter put on our desks, which I just had an opportunity to read from RioCan about the Oakville Place site. And I noticed in here that you've mentioned there's great redevelopment opportunity, but you're not recommending any changes. I'm just wondering why that is and if it will be considered as we go forward. Given its proximity to where the GO train is and everything else, it seems like a logical location for having mixed use there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a number of sites, including, well, basically at either end of Trafalgar Road, including the Longo site to the north and then the commercial properties up there. All those sites which have or are currently designated as commercial, we're not proposing that those be changed at this time simply because we need to get through the commercial employment study, which is slated to commence this year. Once we have a chance to get through that study, we'll have a better idea in terms of how those different sites fit into the commercial hierarchy within the official plan. If there's opportunities to redesignate those, we need to look at that first.
So it hasn't been excluded. It's going. You're looking at the commercial employment study first, and then you may or may not revisit it, because it's not removing the commercial from it. It would just be adding residential onto the commercial is what they would be looking at.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. In a sense that you could be adding residential to it, but the sites in and of themselves still have a certain commercial function to them in terms of the way that they are currently constructed and the way they're accessed. So we need to go through that study first to better understand what the implications could be. So this study, in a sense, helps inform the commercial study later on to say that from just a pure redevelopment point of view and from intensification opportunity point of view, there are those opportunities. So we need to look at that to see whether or not it's valid to continue to pursue it.
Okay, because I know they've done a significant redevelopment at Yonge and Eglinton, which incorporates commercial and residential. And as I said, given its proximity to where the GO train and transit would be, it seems like a logical location to have that. So, okay, thank you.
Mr. Charles, thank you very much for Councillor Adams.
I just wanted to ask our staff if they wanted to speak to the issue of the Midtown transportation work and the GO station crossover point and so forth. It was one of the questions that was raised by one of the delegations this evening, and there was some hand waving over on the staff side, but I'm not sure if they wanted to add anything or if they're satisfied with my comments.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the EA study is still ongoing. We are looking at bringing something to council on the EA prior to the summer. I think Councillor Adams encapsulated the ideas correctly, but I'll ask Tricia if there's anything that was missed on that. I think we got it all. Thank you.
Councillor, you won yourself a bit of praise there. Mr. Charles, thank you very much for your presentation and for listening to and noting all of the information that the residents have shared with us. I know that you will join me, you and the rest of the staff will join me with council in assuring the residents that a very high value of this council is to take a comprehensive approach and to try to be balanced. For everything that we might do that makes sense from a high, or, a higher order level of use, i.e. more people, we try to keep in mind that it'll also generate traffic, and that traffic can generate negative impacts on our residents, and we're trying to be very sensitive to that and to balance that. So I just want the people who came tonight to know that not only have you been heard tonight, you've been heard before, and we have not forgotten, and we do keep it in mind. And if it looks like we're proceeding slowly, it's because it's tricky and we don't want to get it wrong. So thanks very much for coming. Do I have a motion to accept the report and the information? Councillor Adams, all those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Now, Council, that brings us to a discussion item. This is actually a very big night for, I think, important work, not only the consent items that we had at the start, but this discussion item is a recommendation report for the Kerr Village Community Improvement Plan. And this is a very important piece of work, and I'm personally very glad to see. And if we will give our attention to Diane Childs, she will give us the summary necessary for the public to join us in this discussion. But this is very important work for the future of the Kerr Street Village business area, and I know that the ward councillors from Ward 2 probably share my excitement about this report. Diane Childs.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council, and yes, this is a good news story. I'm here this evening to present the recommendation report for the Kerr Village Community Improvement Plan Building Facade Improvement Grant Program. This is item 7 on your agenda and found on page 201. The initial direction to develop the community improvement plan for Kerr Village began with the plan for Kerr Village that was completed and received by council in May 2009. And this idea was carried forward with the policies put in place through the Livable Oakville plan. In fall 2011, Vision 2057 was developed to coordinate the town's master plans and strategic initiatives. Community improvement plans were identified as strategic initiatives for the town under the Create It framework. On February 4th, 2013, planning staff brought forward a report to council which outlined community improvement planning in Oakville. The report highlighted the benefits for developing community plans and the legislative framework. It also recommended that a facade improvement program be developed for Kerr Village. Council directed staff to prepare it and also directed that the implementation of the community improvement plan related to financial and administrative matters be considered through the town's budget process. This is identified as a budget stream, and you can see it orange on the diagram in front of you. Over the spring and summer of 2013, staff met with members of the Kerr Village BIA to discuss the development of the community improvement plan and to receive some feedback on how to proceed. Staff also held a public open house on April 23rd, which provided an opportunity for the public to provide input into the development of the plan and comment on the draft program parameters that were presented at the meeting. The statutory public meeting under the Planning Act for the draft community improvement plan was held on September 30th. On December 3rd, the Administrative Service Committee received the corporate procedure for community improvement planning facade improvement grant program. On December 16th, as part of the budget stream, council approved the town's 2014 budget, including the funding for the building facade improvement program for 2014. Tonight, staff are recommending 3 bylaws be passed, the effect of which will put in place the Kerr Village CIP program and will provide for a general bylaw housekeeping. The comments from the public meeting have been addressed in the accompanying recommendation report. The first bylaw recommended through the staff report is housekeeping in nature. It relates to a previous community improvement plan from 1992 that was developed when the province used to give us funding for community improvement plans. Although the work for the program has been completed a long time ago, the bylaws had never been repealed. And as such, we are recommending that the community bylaws be dissolved and the community improvement project area and community improvement plan be repealed. The second bylaw recommended will designate a project area to which a community improvement plan can apply. A bylaw has been prepared to designate a community improvement project area known for Kerr Village Improvement Project Area. The project area is going to match that of the growth area that's defined in the Livable Oakville plan. And finally, the third bylaw recommended will adopt the community improvement plan, which offers a building facade improvement grant program for the Kerr Village. As a quick overview, the facade improvement grant program is proposed to be a pilot project for a short-term basis. We're going to try it for 5 years, pending funds made available each year. The program will provide financial assistance for improvements to building facades facing public streets. It is designed to as a matching grant program, equal to 50% of eligible improvements and expenses to a maximum of $10,000, and with corner properties that can go up to $12,500. It's intended to be for comprehensive projects and not for quick fixes. And also to ensure that the program is running as it should be and how we want it to run, staff is committed to bring forward a monitoring report to council and any year where there's been budget allocated for it. The monitoring report will report back on the program intake, funds being dispersed through the incentive program, feedback from the applicants, how it's working, and evaluation of its effectiveness. The monitoring report will recommend to council if we should continue or adjust the program at all. It also provides recommendation on the expansion of incentive programs for the future and if new CIPs should be developed in other areas of the town, pending the policy of the Livable Oakville Plan and council approval. With respect to next steps, if successful tonight, staff will issue a press release regarding this new facade improvement grant program for Kerr Village. We'll update the website to include some promotional information materials regarding the new program. We plan to continue to meet with the Kerr Village BIA to launch the program, and we also need to develop community outreach for businesses and landowners in the area through meetings and canvassing and presentations to the business improvement area meetings. That's my brief overview. If you should have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Let's see how you're doing. Councillor DeMoff.
Just a quick question. Can you remind us again why Normandy Place is included in the, if you go back to the map that you had for the bylaw? Because the street is completely residential. There's no commercial on that. No, the next one.
Through your worship, okay. Through your worship, Councillor Damoff, it's actually only, it's not meant for residential properties. It's only for commercial and mixed-use buildings.
Right, so if you go to the next map, I'm just wondering why Normandy Place is included in the next page. If you see where, no, next one.
Oh, it keeps moving.
If you see where the arrow is that goes to subject lands, on the opposite side, there's a street there. It's like a crescent. Everything on that street is residential, so I'm wondering why we even have that on there and that the line doesn't come down to the other side of Normandy Place and then across.
Through your worship to Councillor Damoff, that actually matches the growth area boundary.
I knew there was a reason and I couldn't remember what it was, so okay, thank you.
Thank you for helping with that, Councillor DeMoff. Councillor Robinson.
There, that worked. Tell me what, if any, involvement either of the senior levels of government have in this program, provincial or federal, if any?
Through your worship, easy question to answer, Councillor Robinson, none.
Okay.
They no longer give us the money.
Right, I know that, but there's no other way that they're...
Through your worship, Councillor Robinson, we actually, we have contacted them and made them be aware of the program. The province has developed a handbook to assist us in developing programs for community improvement plans, but that's the extent of it.
Okay, thanks.
Look on the bright side. It means we're independent. We can do what our community really wants without having to worry about what the province wants. Any others on this? Then congratulations one and all, and a bright new day is dawning for Kerr Street. I can feel it. I wonder if one of you Ward 2 folks would like to move this.
Thank you. Yes, and again, to add to your comments, well done and very, very well received within the community. I know the Kerr BIA are extremely excited because this speaks to a key component of their revitalization. So thanks for your work on it.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek, for the motion. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is adopted. Now, the hits don't stop. We still have another very big deal here. And if you'll give your attention to Scott Hanna, the Senior Manager of Current Planning and Heritage, he will give the public a taste of the Cultural Heritage Landscape Strategy report that's sitting before you tonight. Mr. Hanna.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of Council. I'm pleased this evening to present to you a strategy for cultural heritage landscapes. Before I begin, I just wanted to personally acknowledge the work of Sue Shepard, who is the heritage planner on this initiative. She should really be presenting this to you, but unfortunately she's been sick over the holiday period, and actually today was her first day back. So rightfully she is resting this evening, hopefully watching Town TV. So I'm carrying forward the project on her behalf, but I think she deserves all of the credit for what I think is a great report and strategy. The purpose of the strategy in front of you is, and it's Appendix A of your report, is to provide a framework for the identification, evaluation, and protection of cultural heritage landscapes moving forward. Just as a reminder, the need for this strategy really came out of the Bronte Village Heritage Resources Review. At the time, there were several areas of the former Bronte Village, namely the Harbor and Seneca Street, which we identified as potential cultural heritage landscapes. But really, to ensure a consistent approach to the evaluation of those landscapes and others, we needed an overall strategy. So real quick, what is a cultural heritage landscape? There's lots of people applying different definitions, but this one comes, I believe, right out of one of the provincial documents. It's really a recognizable imprint of human settlement, and that's the key. It's things that humans have modified on activities of land over time. However, I want to point out that only those cultural heritage landscapes that have a deep connection with the history of the community and valued by the community should be identified as a cultural heritage landscape. So again, I've mentioned that a lot of people are applying a different kind of implementation of cultural heritage landscapes. They can really include a combination of a number of different elements. Built structures, houses, barns, shops, bridges, natural heritage, and the things that humans create, like hedges, lawns, and gardens. They could be transportation routes and views and vistas, or any of the following combination. The picture there is Gairloch Gardens, which is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. It's really about the built heritage resorts that's there, but it certainly could be modified to include the landscape itself. The strategy that you have before you, and I'm not going to go into great detail on it, has four main sections. One being an introduction to the term. Section 2 really defines what the heritage landscapes are and how to identify and evaluate them. Section 3 outlines the legislative tools available to preserve and protect. And I might add that the consideration of cultural heritage landscapes are now included not only in the Ontario Heritage Act, but also the Planning Act and the Provincial Policy Statement. And the most important section in the strategy itself, and the biggest one, is Section 4, which provides the actual strategies to preserve or to identify and protect. So again, the strategy itself is not a fulsome identification of all potential cultural heritage heritage landscapes that we might have, but it's really setting out how we should go about identifying them and then evaluating them. This is again Section 4, and I'm not going to go through it in detail, but it really has two main sections, as I mentioned, the process to identify and then the process to protect. And the report in front of you really has a number of recommendations embedded in it, and that is the study be viewed as a reference tool to guide managing cultural heritage landscape assessments and identification in the future. Directing staff to create a terms of reference for heritage impact assessments for any future cultural heritage landscape, and we're almost there with that. And to actually, in addition to the Bronte potential that we have, to also look at town-owned properties that may contain landscapes and direct staff to report back to council with an appropriate recommendation. So what the final recommendation that you have in front of you is to endorse the strategy as part of this report. Mr. Mayor, that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna, and a great report and a great strategy. I'm very proud of the work that town staff have done on this, and thank you very much for calling out Susan's work on it, and I too hope she's watching on Town TV to see it. Are there questions for Mr. Hanna? Councillor Giddings.
Thank you very much. At the Heritage Advisory Committee, Councillor Duddick and I were thrilled with the detail that went into, and the members of the committee were very, very pleased that this is coming forward, as well as the inclusion on some of the other features such as trees, in terms of hoping that that will add some more ammunition to us. And so, Mayor, at the appropriate time, I'd be happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. I was idly contemplating auctioning off the right to move this because I thought everybody would want to. Mr. Hanna, in terms of stocking the arsenal or provisioning the arsenal of tools that the town has for protecting and preserving its heritage, with this, is there anything left that we need after this?
Very good question, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a very important step. We certainly have other things that we're going to identify for you. Actually, it's a segue into bringing forward our update to our 3-year work plan. There are also other things that we have up our sleeve, but there's obviously the ongoing work that we do on a day-to-day basis with permitting and such, and there's potential future heritage conservation districts. But this is one new tool that I think the Heritage Act, and as I mentioned, some of the planning documentation, Planning Act and PPS have provided for municipalities, and we're certainly going to take advantage of it.
With this, it's my impression that we're now in position to take advantage of all the powers that are available to us in its execution from here on out.
That's correct. The work is not done, Your Worship. There are things that we obviously have to go out and look at now, including former Ronnie Village and some of the town properties.
So I'll just sum up by saying this is a very proud-making moment for everyone who cares about preserving and protecting our heritage, and thank you to everybody who was responsible for it. Councillor Giddings has moved the report. Anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that is adopted. Council, that brings us to the Advisory Committee minutes for this evening, the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee report, which has been distributed to you. How do you wish to proceed? Councillor Giddings.
I'd be happy to bring the receipt, Mr. Mayor.
I'll take that to have been Councillor Giddings moves the recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that is carried. A motion to rise and report to Council. Councillor Lapworth, thank you for that. All those in favor? That is carried. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 1 and 2, confidential consent item C1, public hearing items 3, 4, 5, and 6, discussion items 7 and 8, and advisory committee minutes item 9, as noted by the clerk. Mover and seconder for this report would be in order. Councillor Johnston and Councillor Robinson, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The report is adopted. Are there any matters of emergency, congratulations, or condolence that want to come forward at this point? Councillor DeMoff.
I have one of congratulations. On January 1st, the largest charitable polar bear dip in Canada was held once again here in Oakville, and Councillor Duddick and I were very happy to take part in it again, and the organizers raised, well exceeded their goal and have so far raised $140,000. It's a real feather in the cap of Oakville that we host this event here, and I don't know that people realize just the amount of attention that it draws to Oakville, and I'd like to congratulate the Courage Brothers and everyone who came out. 700 dippers went in the water on what is the coldest polar bear dip day in recent memory. So, oh, and we had Councillor Duddick and I had someone who was representing Gene Simmons, his alter ego, and went in the water with us. So it was a lot of fun, and it's something that we're both really proud to be part of. So anyway, I'd like to congratulate all involved.
Well, Councillor DeMoff, thank you very much, and on behalf of the rest of Council, we who can't contemplate getting that cold congratulate you for your courage and the warmth of your blood. I only have one small question. I want to know how many weeks it took to warm up after.
Yeah, I'm still cold. Actually, seriously, it's not nearly as bad as you think it might be. That's right. It really isn't.
That's just a clever way to try to get us to do it, right?
You are welcome to join us. I can tell you that right now, as are everyone else on council.
All right. Thank you very much for the report. All that remains now is a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Grant, thank you. I need one more. Councillor Giddings, thank you. This is the authority for the bylaws. 2014 as listed in the agenda, except for 2014-8, which it corresponds to the item that we deferred. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and those are adopted. That does complete our agenda, and a lot of very good work indeed. Thank you for your time and attention. It's been great working with you, and we are adjourned.